everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Shelby Stutz, and I am the gallery curator for the Walter E. Terhune Art Gallery at Owens Community College. Tonight, we are premiering our Artist in Residence program, and our first artist for the program is Beth Genson, and she's premiering it with her exhibit, The Heavens and Earth. So a little bit of detail about this Artist in Residence program. It's brand new for Owens and the Center for Fine and Performing Arts. We are inviting artists to come here to create work and to teach classes as well. So we can get the experience for our community, our students and faculty through local artists. And she also has the exhibit on display. So I can get to more details about that later. So Beth, she's a local artist, and she will be giving a nice artist talk as well. And also joining us is Leatra Harper. She is an advocate for the Freshwater Accountability Project, a nonprofit organization, which goes hand in hand with Beth Genson's exhibit tonight.
Yes. Thanks, Shelby.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm very honored to be the first artist in residence here at Owens. And it's just so exciting. This is such a beautiful gallery, such a beautiful building to work in. So I'm excited to be here into the middle of August. And I'm going to be, you'll see later that I'm set up back here. We're going to do a live demo of the process that I use for the paintings in the gallery, which this is encaustic art. And if you're not familiar with encaustic art, it's a combination of oil paint, beeswax, and Damar varnish. So it's a very different technique. And we'll talk more about how it's done a little bit later. The exhibit itself, The Heavens and Earth, is something I've been thinking about and working on for the past couple of years. Leatra and I have been friends for over 30 years, but about 10 years ago, she was in a situation which she'll tell you a little bit about down at Seneca Lake in southeastern Ohio, and when the fracking industry first came to that area. And I had the opportunity 2 years ago to visit the area with her, meet some of the people, see what the effects of fracking were on the environment, on the people that live there, and how much worse and serious this is becoming and more widespread. And so I came back and I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something to support the efforts. Leatra started the Freshwater Accountability Group to address what's happening to the water and everything in that area. And so my paintings were inspired by what I saw there and by her project, and 25% of the proceeds of the sale of the paintings goes towards the Freshwater Accountability Project. And Leatra, if you just want to talk a little bit about the project and what you've experienced, and then we'll look at the paintings.
Well, we were living in Southeast Ohio for about 10 years, and we were going to maybe retire there because we were staying on Seneca Lake and we just loved it. And it was pretty undeveloped, and we thought, well, it's a conservancy district, so it will probably remain that way. And we were more concerned about real estate development and things like that. It's Ohio's second largest inland lake. But my daughter said, you might not want to do that here because they're going to frack it. And then I said, what is fracking? And as the more I learned about it, I keep saying fracking is not as bad as I thought it would be to begin with. It is much, much worse than I could have ever imagined. But the first thing that I realized was when you have to take away special environmental regulations that no other industry can have, have it taken away like they have, then I realized, well, this might not end well because it makes a tremendous amount of waste by destroying a tremendous amount of water. And that waste is actually falsely labeled as non-hazardous when in fact it is very toxic and radioactive. So it was down the rabbit hole we went. I didn't want to leave my home, but I started filming the flaring and doing the fracker tracking myself. My husband was very concerned. There were brine trucks. It was kind of like it just took over and industrialized the entire countryside. And I couldn't believe it. So I kept trying to document it as it began. And one time I knew I was filming the flaring, and I knew I was not feeling very well. And I walked in the house and my husband said, you smell like benzene. You've been exposed. We've got to get out of here. So reluctantly and quickly, actually, we just left and we came up here to Northwest Ohio, but I'll keep going back. I'll keep advocating for the people there. A lot of people have their families there and they just don't have any place else they can go because they have to live there. And it's very hard to sell a property if you can't drink your water. And so, you know, the real estate and a lot of the tourism that's there is gradually being impacted as people are realizing what's really being done to that area. It is really pretty sad.
Thanks, Leatra. Well, let's go take a look at some of the paintings and we can both talk about, I'll talk about the work and the process, and Leatra will talk about her impressions from that as to the fracking. And I think we'll start over here and just work our way down the wall. So I'm traditionally an oil painter. I'm a landscape painter. So my paintings tend to be more realistic, but this gave me the opportunity to go a little bit more abstract. Encaustic painting for most encaustic artists in the United States today and in other parts of the world it's most used in abstract work. So this gave me a chance to get more abstract, and I loved how this created almost like a marbling effect. And this was done with just layers of encaustic medium that's clear, and then layering on oil paint pigment and encapsulating that inside the wax. Now, one of the cool things about encaustic is it's very touchable. The wax perfectly preserves the paintings, and instead of varnishing them, you can just shine them up with a cloth, and that polishes the paintings and brings out the luster of the wax and the colors. But Leatra, if you want to comment on what that makes you think of in the fracking world.
It's pretty. I hate to take away from it, but it actually does represent to me what people have said about fracking is that once you go about 2 miles below the earth and you split everything apart, that nothing's ever going to come back up into our surface water or our groundwater. But that's actually what's happening. And we're wondering what's going to happen over time because of the hydrostatic pressure. And every time there's fracking, maybe an average of 10 million gallons of water is used. And that water, maybe 80% of it, up to 80% of it will stay underground. And over time, what's going to happen to that? We don't know because there's no tracers, there's no isotopes. There should be, because we're already finding out that there's migration underground and some of the gases and the fluids are actually coming to the surface and they're communicating with existing conventional wells. So this is how it could start to actually poison an aquifer if that were to happen, because this stuff that's marinating underground becomes highly radioactive. And how would we know?
And the other thing that I was thinking about with this too was that they're finding now, and it's already happening I believe it's already happened in Southeast Ohio, that it can cause earthquakes in places that have never had them, because, you know, we're miles below the Earth's surface. And I know you're going to probably describe the process a little more as we go along here, so that people understand what they actually do when they frack and what that means. This was inspired by a Google Maps map of fracking wells. So this would be your urban areas here, and a smaller one here, maybe a town and a little bit a city here. Your rural roads with the farmland and the trees and the good things that we all enjoy. And then each of these little areas are fracking wells. And that does not even represent how closely. If I would have put them as closely, it would have just taken away from the work. But I think I mentioned in here, yeah, according to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, more than 80,000 oil and gas wells in Ohio were drilled and produced from 1952 to 2014. And in 2015, there were 1,280 oil and gas wells stimulated by hydraulic fracturing. And that is all just in Southeast Ohio, because that's where they're doing it.
Yeah, and if you look on Google Maps in the area of Southeast Ohio where there has been a lot of fracking, you'll see these little white dots, and then you also see compressor station pads, and you'll see impoundment pad ponds and things like that. And then you'll see the clear cutting where all the pipelines have gone and all the frac pads were built. So quite a bit of sedimentation and erosion that can happen as well because of those hills. And, you know, when you put in two 42-inch pipelines side by side and you have to go up and down the hills, you'll see some of that as you, you know, if you go on Google Maps, you can see very clearly what's happening there. That's probably where you got the idea, huh?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. This I titled this fracture because once again, you know, they're going down into the sedimentary rocks, the shale layers. That's where the gas is located, and they're drilling down into those and breaking into those areas.
And there's a living ecosystem there, and bacteria and things that have been existing as an ecosystem for millions and millions of years that now to frack, so it doesn't clog up the pipes when they want the gas and the oil come back up, they'll shoot down biocides to actually keep that living ecosystem from living to clog up their pipes. That's also a frack waste. But it's a community down there. And they've also said that that has something to do to help mitigate climate change as well. So I hope not too much is being done to destroy it, but who knows?
And the neat thing about encaustic, which you'll see in the next couple of pieces too, is that, you know, the paints can be anywhere from transparent, translucent, opaque. You can build very unique layers. Then you can carve once the wax is hardened, you can carve back into the piece. You can see those layers through, so you can see the different colors and layers that were built up in the piece, and that gives it a lot of dimension and depth. And you'll see that in this piece too. There's a lot of texture on here. Again, this is touchable. It's not like when you go to the museum, you can't touch. Like I told Shelby, put up some please touch me signs. So maybe Leah, you could talk about what they actually do, like when they frack.
Yeah, because then, you know, up to 2 miles deep, even up to 14,000 feet across, we have seen these long laterals can be drilled. It's amazing technology. Actually, I mean, quite a bit of investment in our government and things like this to even get it off the ground, dismantle regulations to get it off the ground. But now they can do that to break apart the shale. And that's a tremendous amount of pressure that goes down there and a tremendous amount of water that gets spread out.
Because they're forcing water down
Right.
into the earth to break that up.
Yes.
Up to, like I said, up to 600 unknown chemicals that could be involved in that process.
And those long laterals are left. I mean, we don't know how much of the water, like I said, is marinating underneath, and that might gradually find faults or fissures to be able to come back through. But a lot of it is left underground. I just call them, those are what I call horizontal injection wells, because the companies love it if it doesn't come back up, because then they don't have to dispose of it. But what's happening down there when that is left down there, once again, we'll find out, but maybe when it's a little bit late to do anything about it.
So once more, we've got some pieces that represent what's going on under the earth with the different, you know, layers and how they're affected. We're still dealing with the earth in this section. Do you have any thoughts to add?
Once again, I mean, to me, it's a beautiful living ecosystem down there that we really don't understand. I think we might understand a little bit more about the surface of Mars than we do what's really going on down there for millions of years. That seems to have been working right along just okay. And of course, those radioactive materials are naturally occurring. They're safely buried that deep below the earth for a reason, but it's still radioactive when it comes up, you know, so it's no longer buried, it's no longer safely contained, it's been released, and it's coming back to the surface of the earth.
Now in this piece, you can see I built up quite a lot of layering. I really wanted to dig deep and be able to cut back into this piece. I can go back in with color, with different colors down into the area to bring that up from the bottom. The process, which you'll see when I demonstrate, is very fluid. So it can cause a lot, you know, this to look very fluid, and you'll see that in the water pieces when we get to that part. You can play a lot with it. You're playing with heat. So it's a super fun process. And the classes that I'm teaching here at Owens, they're for anybody. Anybody can come to those. You don't have to have an artistic background. I've even had kids come with their parents or grandparents. Like I've had 9-year-olds that just love to experiment. I provide tons of materials. tons of opportunities. I have had a grant with the Toledo Arts Commission a few years ago to purchase equipment. And so I was able to get a lot of equipment that is the top choice equipment for this procedure. And so it's fun to come and play with it all. You don't have to have any experience, and I guarantee you'll enjoy it and have a good time.
It's actually pretty beautiful, your art. I hate to cast a pall upon it, but you know, it does remind me of what's left underneath with all the broken up shale that what's done after fracking and just left.
All of these pieces are done on encaustic board, it's called. So it's birch wood, and I left the sides all natural birch. They do have a very light clear coat on them just to protect the wood. They could be stained to match decor, but they're ready to hang. They could be framed, but they don't need to be. And they are, you know, just very durable and easy to work with. They're light too, because it's birch. That's the best surface, I feel. The hard surfaces, you could do encaustic on some canvas if it wasn't too big, because canvas flexes, that doesn't make it the ideal surface for encaustic. Being wax, it could crack depending on how many layers you build up. So I prefer the board to that. You'll see some natural wood over here too that I used, but any natural kind of surface really accepts encaustic very well.
And this reminds me of the fact that what we're doing with what's called the brine that comes back, it's kind of sounds a little benign by calling it brine, but it is a very salty mixture of chemicals and radioactive isotopes. But now there's a bill in Ohio that they're trying to pass in our legislature that will actually make that brine legal to spread on our roads. And that's something we don't want to have happen. And it will dry, it will go
And
airborne.
it's already happening.
It has been happening, and this is just a way to make it more legal to happen. Right.
And they spread it on the roads to, they say, for salt, you know, like for salting the roads. Now that's not the brine that you see up here, them putting on the roads to pre-treat them. It's not the same thing, but they're using that brine that comes back up in Southeast Ohio for that. And also they have a lot of dirt roads. So they say it keeps the dirt down if they just spray that on there.
As a dust suppressant.
So, yeah.
But yeah, ODOT here in Northwest Ohio has purchased some of that.
Oh, they have?
Yes, to be able to, they say it has to be very, very cold to use it, but
I
we do
didn't
have some of
realize.
it stored in Bowling Green last I heard. Yeah, we're watching this very closely because this legislation just cannot go through. We just cannot be spreading this stuff on our roads. It's just another cheap way the industry has to try to get rid of their waste, but this is not the answer. It's not, we can't have that.
And, you know, living by Seneca Lake, Leatra was talking about the flares and things. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And, you know, I entitled this Smoke on the Water because it actually, the water was on.
And Cuyahoga River's got nothing on fracking, I'm telling you, because I wish we had the kind of attention to what's being done to the water in Southeast Ohio like we did back then when the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. But the flaring, actually, when the industry first began in the region, it would sometimes go on for weeks because that was like the excess gas. They didn't have a market. They wanted to get to the oil. They would just flare it off. And so I've got pictures and videos. It just sounds like something out of Dante's Inferno. Actually, I said it seems like we're just opening up the earth and letting all these roaring demons come out, and that's pretty good depiction of it. Yeah.
And in this one, you know, I went in with gold, a lot of gold, some gold paint. I like to use metallics. You'll see in the next ones I've used a copper. I've used bronze. I wanted to use the metallics in there because, you know, we always think of metallic as value. It's the money. Where's the money? So all this is about money. And, you know, what they're doing is, you know, it's making
It's too unregulated
for the industry.
It's just too unregulated. They're just really getting away with things that nobody should get away with, and no other industry in the United States could get away with what they're doing.
Now, in these pieces, you can see that it's very versatile when you work in encaustic. These have tree leaves, tree pieces from trees and stems all collaged into the pieces. You can collage any kind of natural materials are the best because they will absorb the pigment and absorb the wax. So they work real well. So collage is a good technique. Things like paper, natural papers work well. So it's a good technique for collage. It's also great for photography. You can actually, you know, put photographs into encaustic wax. You can print with encaustic. So if you're an artist or if you like a particular medium, whether it be watercolor, painting, printmaking, photography, collage, all those work really well and can be incorporated into the wax and into encaustic. You just have to, you know, use some proper techniques and then you can take what you're already working on in your particular medium and try encaustic as something new to add to your work.
I love trees. I've been called a tree hugger. I think that's a compliment, but another part of this industry is all the clear cutting, and you'll see truckloads after truckloads of trees that have been cut down and a lot of clear cutting for the frac pads and the pipelines. So quite a bit of forest disruption there in the region because of fracking.
And that's one of the things I noticed when we were down there, just driving around the roads, that it just looks, I mean, the trees, you can see where swaths of trees are missing, but you can also see that where they're dying.
Yeah.
You know, the trees are dying because of this, the brine spreads in, you know, it's getting into the earth, it's coming up from the earth. And it looks like a war zone almost, you know, it looks not with all, you know, there's all the equipment and everything, and there's these huge trucks going down the roads and destroying the roads because they're so heavy and full of waste. And then, you know, the landscape is just, it's sad. It's really sad. This one I called Sacrificial Lake because I feel like, you know, in talking about Seneca Lake and other water bodies in that area, bodies of water, you know, they're being sacrificed for this process.
I just call, by doing fracking, I call it opening up a Pandora's box, because it's not just, this reminds me of like an impoundment pond, and they are so toxic, but they try to use the water over again. It just concentrates the contaminants and the radioactivity. But if you see an impoundment pond, you'll see all these safety measures, like you'll see like a human, like a life ring for if somebody would actually fall into this fenced in pond. Well, being able to swim would be like the last worry you would have if you fell into one of those frac waste impoundment ponds. Yeah.
If for people who come to the exhibit, you will be able to read, there's commentary with each piece to help you understand what fracking is, what it's doing to the earth, you know, the wildlife, the vegetation, the atmosphere in the sky, the water, everything. You'll be able to read a little bit more about it. One of the cool things about encaustic is, like I said, you can do it on natural pieces. These are natural slices of ash wood that my brother cut out of his woods. And we actually use these pieces of wood for centerpieces for my daughter's wedding. So we had them on the center of the table with wildflowers and different things on them. And then they were in my garage. So I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do with these? You know, I didn't want to throw them away. He went to a lot of work to cut these and bring them and everything. And I'm like, well, I can do encaustic painting on them. So I just had a lot of fun putting a huge amount of texture and color, and they really pop, I think, and are vibrant to look at. And they have that natural wood with the bark still on a lot of it. So.
Yeah, it's nice to see the trees being used for art when they're cut down, but yeah. I'm hoping that I'm not depressing people too much by this, but it is very pretty. And I just also have to admire how you're able to create things like that are just really a work of art. I keep thinking about all the particulate matter, though, that people are exposed to, and they're just finding out now that with all that flaring, and I wish I would have known this, but it did occur to me that maybe some of the particulate matter could actually be radioactive, and that's what's been found to be true. A Harvard study just recently found that to be true. So.
And this one, I titled this "The Road We're On," and this was just kind of like I was trying to recreate going down one of those country roads, and like the brine spread on the road, and the trees that were dying, and just how that was affecting the whole atmosphere. It kind of reminds me of, I saw this, and it's been years since I've seen it, so I can't really quote it or anything, but have you seen that Julia Roberts when she's portraying Mother Earth? It's like a video from years ago. Have you seen it? And she's talking about the fact, she's talking as Mother Earth, and she's saying, you're not killing me. I have been here for millions of years. You are killing yourselves. You will die, and I will still be here, and I will come back. It may take hundreds or thousands of years, but I'm not going anywhere, And, I just think about my children and my grandchildren and how these things, and how we're getting to a tipping point where, we've done all these things saying, oh, it's just, a tiny portion of a degree, we're raising the climate, the temperature of the climate. But all of a sudden that's going to snowball, and we're starting to see that. I mean, look at the hurricanes, the earthquakes. Look at how our weather in this past year has just been devastated by what we're doing. And we're going to get to the point where it's going to be too late to turn back. And it's just keeps me awake at night.
They called it, at first they called the natural gas from fracking the bridge fuel, right? And well, we don't need that because we can do plenty without. It's actually not America's clean energy future. That's how it was portrayed to begin with. It's actually dirtier than coal. When you look at all the environmental impacts of fracking, there's no reason it should have ever been done to begin with. So now we have a glut, and the low prices, and that makes them try to get rid of their waste in cheaper ways. And when I go to Southeast Ohio now, it's almost like when I drive the roads, I look at how beautiful it was and how I remember how it was before fracking. And then you turn the corner, and then you look down the road and you see a compressor station, and you just want to turn around and leave again, because you just realize that it's such it could be such a rust belt, because a lot of these companies are LLCs. If they go out of business, they can leave us with their mess, and they won't have the ramifications, but the people that live there will have to pay for it.
A lot of the paintings in this area are focused more on the water. I love to paint water, and encaustic is very friendly, I think, to water and sky. You'll see when I do the demonstration how you're moving the paint with heat, so it's very fluid, and it just lends itself to water, I think. And then, like down in this area, I went over with these darker paints, and then I could take tools and scrape back through to delineate the leaves a little more and the foliage. There are tons of tools that you can use for encaustic, and a lot of them I haven't even tried yet, but I just go around the house and go, oh, wait, I could use this little knife for something, or here's a cool piece of wire or fence, fencing that would be, let's try this out. So, it's just fun to play with.
Reminds me, we go out on Seneca Lake for what we call the sunset cruise, and it would be just spectacular sky, and it would reflect onto the water like that. And that's something I really miss, because we'd swim in the water. I won't swim there anymore, but it's actually part of Wills Creek watershed, and Wills Creek goes through Seneca Lake, and that's one of the lakes that was formed for recreation, conservation, and flood control, not for fracking. But the Conservancy districts made hundreds of millions of dollars by fracking and by selling the water out of Seneca Lake. So what you would see is along Seneca Lake, these big compressors that would have the hoses down in the water, and that the water that was being sucked out of that lake for fracking would never be able to reflect the sun on the surface of the earth again. And that was pretty heartbreaking to handle at first.
And when you saw over there, the number of fracking wells so close together, and how many gallons is it per well every time they frack it?
Oh, 10 million, that was, it's getting to be more, a greater amount now because they're trying to get more out of one pad. So they're making longer laterals and using more water because water's so cheap. 2 or 3 cents a gallon maybe is what they pay for fresh water.
Another interesting thing that I read about too was that, they also use sand. Silica sand. And that's not like the sand that you would find on beaches or things like that. But they are actually, they're finding there's a shortage of silica sand because they use silica sand in so many things, like with concrete and, all those kinds of things, buildings and so forth. And there's no way to replace sand. It took thousands of years to create. So there's no way to replace it. And they're using it and it can never be used again. So that's another natural resource that's being devastated.
And it's associated with silicosis. So a lot of the people working in the frac pads that add the silica sand, they should have respirators and they should have personal protective equipment, but they don't. So there's a lot of people who are suffering from silica exposures. And that's another thing that they use on our roads is for beneficial use, it's down blended frac waste. So when that dries out, the silica, I just talked to the Ohio EPA about that today, and they will not come out and test, but we're pretty certain that the silica has been put on the roads.
Water is one of my favorite subjects. I love to paint landscapes. And so I did a lot of contemplating what the area looked like and what lakes were like. The lake was like prior to any of this starting, that it was like Leatra said, the sunsets, the sunrises, just the beauty and the peacefulness of being out there that's now being destroyed. And maybe Leatra, you could talk a little bit about what the effects are on people's drinking water in that area.
Well, the EPA has standards for drinking waters, but there's also exceedances of trihalomethanes that happens when you get the brine involved with the chlorination of the drinking water. So there's been exceedances for that. And I've been involved in a lawsuit. Actually, I got kind of sued myself for bringing the lawsuit, but it was the fact that this water was, that the Ohio EPA was not adequately regulating the water from a treatment plant that was discharging into, in this case, it was the Mahoning River. We did win that case, actually, and we're able to get a judgment that made the company that was processing the frac waste not be so irresponsible about putting it back into the water. But that's an ongoing thing unless you have citizens and community science like we have through the American Geophysical Union Thriving Earth Exchange projects that we've done to be able to get scientists to test the water for ourselves. They're not going to find it because there's only a certain amount of elements that are required to be tested in the drinking water. And radium 226, 228 is odorless and tasteless. So I think we're taking our chances. By the time we find out what might be in it, it could be pretty extensive. And there's already health effects from people drinking the water and their animals, their farm animals and their pets.
Yeah, because I did read things about people's animals dying, the farm animals dying and things like that. And
teeth falling out, the teeth. I
Teeth
mean, it's,
Oh.
there's actually a study now in Pennsylvania because they've been fracking about 5 years longer than Ohio, but there's cases of childhood rare cancers that they are attributing to living near these operations. And the more we find out about the possibility of radioactive particulate matter and the releases of radium in our water, the more we have to really look at it closely, but I don't think we're looking close enough now. But I think if we did, and I have some information on health effects already, if somebody really paid attention, they'd have to shut the industry down right now.
Is it true that people's water out of their faucet has kind of been able to
I know
light
people,
it?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
you can actually light the water.
right.
And what is that that's burning?
Methane.
Methane.
Yeah. They say it's not really toxic, but that's one thing you don't really want your water to do is catch on fire in your
Right.
house.
Right. Yeah. Here, more images here of lakes, waterways. You can see in this one, the name of this is cavitation, which just means bubbles in the water. So I got this nice effect here with the paint where it actually looks like bubbles in the water. Lots of layering with translucent colors. Like I said, this is just perfect for this particular medium. There's something I was going to ask you about or mention, but I forgot what it was. So maybe I'll think of it.
Are you thinking about the migration of the, like the injection wells? There's injection wells now that are used, you know, have been pretty much used for disposal of frack waste. Ohio is so unregulated that the frack waste is coming from other states like Pennsylvania that more closely regulate the fracking waste. At least they can trace it, and they trace it to Ohio because it's cheaper to dispose of here. But then we have injection wells that have communicated with conventional wells, and we're finding migration up to 5 miles away. So if you see some bubbling, that might not be a good thing. Yeah, that's already happened.
And this, what you could choose to look at here is a beautiful sunset on the water. But what Leotra has seen when she's been there is actually the flaring of the, what do you call them? The stack.
Yeah.
Which looks really pretty much just like that. And so it's replaced the, you know, beautiful sunset in a lot of cases with this horrific man-made disaster. But I'll stick with the sunset.
Yeah, I might have to buy this painting myself because, but then I have to look at it as being the sunset because to think about the flaring that's been done and what's being released and the people that work in the industry that are exposed to some of these toxins and they're not even told, they're not given personal protective equipment. They're trying to reduce the flaring quite a bit, but we had a lot of dismantle regulations that are just now trying to you know, reverse some of that's been taken down. So hopefully there won't be as much because that is actual saleable product that they're just burning off because they want something that is, you know, more saleable, more money. So yeah, when you go down there, you never know if you're going to turn the corner, if you're going to see a flaring, but you never know if you're going to smell something, if you're going to get a headache. You just don't know from one twist and turn of the road to the next what you might see, smell, or hear. Like when there's flaring, it's just a tremendous roar. It sounds terrible.
That's what really struck me too, that it just affronted every sense. You know, you could smell bad smells. You saw the devastation. You could really almost feel the vibration of the earth. And of course, hear the sounds. And I had a recording that I wanted to bring in. I know Leotra has some video too that we'll share maybe at another reception of, you know, what people actually have to hear sitting on their front porch, you know, where it used to be the peaceful sounds of the, you know, the crickets and the birds and just the natural beauty of the land. And now it's these horrible, loud noises and just knowing that that's going on right next to their homes,
It's actually turned neighbor against neighbor. It's another sociological thing. I worked with the University of Cincinnati. They did a study and it showed how it just split apart families and neighbors because somebody would lease, but the person next to them had the contamination, or their family one person was employed in the industry, or the wife didn't want to lease the land for fracking, but the husband wanted the money, or vice versa. And that's one thing the university researchers said was, it's not just a fragmentation of the earth, it's a fragmentation of communities that this industry does. Like they want to put a pipeline through. Oh, don't tell your neighbor what you got per acre, you know, or your neighbor's already leased, so you might as well, you're the only one that hasn't leased yet. That happened here in Northwest Ohio. But then, you know, they get people, they're not even talking to each other, so they can get the cheapest acreage possible.
Well, you've actually had your life threatened more than once, haven't you?
Oh, well, you know, don't tell my husband.
Well, and this is something that you know, she never thought she'd ever, you know, she wasn't out there trying to find a cause. It just landed in her lap, and look what she's done. I mean, all the work that you've done to make people aware of what's happening and to try to bring, you know, get legal action for what's going on, and, you know, even to risking your own life. That's,
Well, what you do is you take your cell phone and you put
God
it up
bless
in the
you.
rear view of your mirror, so they think that you're videotaping, and then they will back way off. But I know of people that have been run off the road because, and that was, you know, I called it the Wild West of fracking, but actually, I think that the people that are living there, they're much more at risk because the people that are working in the industry, they don't know what they're exposed to. So we finally got some low-cost air monitors to show that total VOCs is way beyond the health limits that people should have for exposures. And that's the first we've been able to do to get, because the agencies won't come out and measure with their own much better equipment. So they have to take our word for it, but we have scientists working for us now to be able to document that. Maybe that'll get us somewhere.
why is it that you think that this particular industry is just getting away with?
Money, it's money. People only seem to care about the short-term money. The people in Houston that are doing this, the LLCs, they're not going to live next to it. And some of the people I know that lease, they said, put the frac pad over there, far away from where I live, right on top of their neighbor, even a daycare center right there in St. Clairsville. The rich landowner said, put it as far away from my house as you can, so it's right next to a daycare center. Sometimes I wish I was just making this up because it feels like it's
middle
too.
ones here real quick.
Yeah, it can't help.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the middle pieces here really quick. I know that one of the things that I really love about, I live in the country. There's like one house, a rental house across the street from me. I have farmland all around me. And when I go home, especially at night when I go home, it is dark. It's dark. And those stars, and I'll get out of my car and I'm just, you know, doing one of these because it's just incredible to be able to look up and see the night sky. And so I wanted to capture in some of these paintings on these center panels, the night sky and the atmosphere, even beyond what we see, because I know that this isn't just affecting under the earth or what we see on land, it's also affecting the atmosphere. And I don't know if you have any information on that, or if they even have anything yet. It's still so relatively new.
Well, we're talking about climate change here, and it's a major contributor to climate change with the greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not just the fracking.
Because methane, that's a greenhouse gas. One of
methane, yeah, 80 times more than CO2 over a 20-year shorter period of time. And there's a lot of leaks on the compressor stations and the pipelines. And so all the infrastructure too, that is exhausting into the air. So now we have methane hotspots because of fracking. And it's taking us in the exact wrong direction we need to go.
Well, Leotra, thank you so much for inspiring me.
For trusting you.
Sorry. For inspiring me in this exhibit. And I truly hope that people will see the beauty in the work that I've done, and also consider, you know, maybe taking a piece for their own home. And like I said, 25% of the sale of everything in the gallery will go towards the Freshwater Accountability Project, and all their donations, 100% goes towards the effort here in Ohio to save our water and to end the fracking industry, and have it regulated. They're going to be here in the gallery through August 13th.
They'll be here.
I will get them up on my website, but you can see, so you'll be able to see them on there, which is Beth Genson, and it's GENSON, BethGenson.com. Along with my other work. And now I think we're going to do a demo, and I'm going to get these guys to try encaustic painting just like I would in the classes.
Exactly. Thank you, Beth. Yes. Thank you both so much for talking. We're so excited to try this out.
So we'll go over here, and I'll try not to pull this off the table. So I've got it set up here, and this is just a fraction of what I bring to the classes. Like I said, I got a grant from the Toledo Arts Commission a few years ago to get equipment to teach encaustic painting. And this is an anodized aluminum palette. So if you normally think about oil painting, you think about, tubes of paint that you'd squeeze out onto a wooden or paper or glass palette that you would paint from. This palette is 200 degrees, so it's very hot, so we don't want to touch it. And it needs to stay around 200 degrees. If you get too much higher, like if you get up to about 250, it's going to start to smoke. And at that point, it does put off some fumes that might not be really good for you. But at 200 degrees, it's fine because this is natural beeswax that's used in this, so it's not harmful at that temperature. So when we do encaustic painting, we always have to heat things. So we have heat guns, and you can also use blowtorches. I didn't bring my blowtorch tonight.
Darn it.
Sorry. I also have some handheld heated tools that you can use to fuse things for small things. And I didn't bring those either. We're going to try to keep it simple tonight. But before you start work, and I just wanted to go briefly into the history of encaustic painting. Encaustic painting actually dates back to, they can date it back as far as 5th century BC in Greece. Wow. The Greek sailing community, they sailed for trade and also they had warships, and they coated their ships with wax to preserve them and keep them waterproof. So at some point, somebody got the great idea that if you mixed pigment in with that wax, you could decorate the ships. So they started decorating their ships with that encaustic technique. And then a little bit later, a lot of Greeks moved to Egypt, and they became very involved in using the encaustic process. And this is the most famous part of that they can trace back is the Fayum portraits. And these are perfectly preserved. They are the death masks that they painted on birch with the encaustic technique. So they would paint your portrait either before or immediately after you died, and those would be inserted into the mummy case. So in the afterlife, people would know what you looked like. So these are actually examples of ones that you can find in the New York, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they do look just fresh and new.
Yeah, stunning.
Yeah, they're just beautiful. So encaustic painting became a lost art because clearly it wasn't the easiest thing to do. You'd have to build your fire and heat up a pot, heat things, and it just wasn't very convenient. So as paints began to be mixed and put into tubes and things, people started doing, oil paint, watercolor, and then eventually acrylic paint. It was so much easier where you could transport it. And then in the 20th century, in about 1920, after electricity became common, certain artists started experimenting again with the encaustic techniques. And so most of the artists, like I mentioned before, that you'll find that do encaustic, like some of you might know would be like Diego Rivera, Jasper Johns. Yes. They used it very abstractly. But it can be, like I said, combined with a lot of other art techniques. So I'm going to give a quick little demo, and then I'm going to let these guys do some painting. Yay. So the first thing in my classes, and like I said, you don't have to have any painting background. Could you hand me paper?
Oh, of course. All of it?
You can just hand it over. So one of the first things we do is some printing, and this is a mono print. So a lot of times you'll think of printing as being something where you make multiples of a piece. You can print off, this is number 5 of 100 or whatever, and they're numbered. Well, mono prints mean there's one, so it's a mono print. So what we're going to do with that is you can take the blocks, and like I said, these are R&F Paints. They're handmade in New York, and I went to their factory. I've taken many classes and teaching courses at their factory. They make all the paints there, and you can take the paints and just apply them to the surface.
Wow.
So I just want people to hands-on start by just putting that paint down. Wow. Being that my landscapey self, or just
it's so hot enough it does look like paint. That's incredible.
Yeah, see how it just melts in there. Yeah.
Wow. And can you mix all your colors on that palette there?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. You can mix them right on the palette.
Wow. Oh, how cool.
And you can see right here that this is a very translucent color, whereas some of the other ones opaque, one that's pretty much opaque. So if I bring this brown in here, This is a little bit more opaque. What I would do is put this on here. And normally I would take it's just a little protective sheet.
Oh, I see.
And I would roll this, but let's try it. This is a sculpture tool.
So that helps flatten it out so it presses it into the paper.
Right.
Oh,
And
how
this,
cool.
and it's probably gonna smear because I just moved it, but it's a lot easier to do when you have the brayer.
Right.
But because the watercolor paper is so textured, pick up
Oh, wow. Look at that.
the texture of the, and a lot of times when I'm painting and I get done with the colors I'm using on the palette, I'll say, whoa, this is really pretty. And I'll just print, for example, what was laying
Oh
on
my gosh.
the palette. I'll just grab a piece of watercolor paper and print it out.
So leftovers become your inspiration.
Right,
That's
right.
so
Well, you don't want to
wonderful.
waste this paint because it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, how expensive is it? I know you're telling us a little bit
Well,
about that.
these small blocks of pigment and wax, depending on the color, run anywhere from $10 to $30. I can also buy bigger blocks, which I have a lot of those at home, especially
Wow.
when I'm working this large. You know, I'm gonna use a
Gosh.
bigger block. I'm gonna put it in, a cup and melt the whole
Right.
block. Now this, in this cup, which you can see is clear, if I tip it a little bit here, this is just the encaustic medium. So it doesn't have any color in it. Now I can build up a base. You can kind of see here that I've built up that encaustic, and then I can color on the top of it. So I've got that thickness that I can carve back into. That actually comes like this, and I've just melted it. So it's
Oh.
little pellets.
That's awesome. What a great way to save money and also, still
Yeah.
utilize all the beautiful colors.
So then when I want to clean my palette, I can just wipe this off
Oh my gosh.
the paper towel. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to recycle the paper towels. I use a lot of paper towels. And then you can see that it did leave a stain of color on there. And we actually use soy wax, which is a softer wax. You hear soy candles that you burn. This is soy wax. You wouldn't want to mix it in with your paint because your paint wouldn't harden like it should. So you're going to put a little soy wax on there. And this is also how you clean the brushes if you want to clean the color out of your brush.
Wow. Gosh, it's so simple. And I feel like it's so easy to utilize and so tactile. I love it. That's so great.
Now-
Because it is almost a little intimidating at first. It's like, this is hot and,
So
it's
that's why
melting.
and that's why I start with where you're actually just applying it. Now, I'm going to do a little work on this painting, just so you see how I would work on this larger board. So I'm going to need my wax here. So I'm going to just melt a puddle of paint. Apply a little pressure here. And this is a brush holder, so I can keep my brushes soft and pliable by leaning them up here on the brush holder. And then I can pour up to half, mix here. And that'll thin it down and also make it more transparent. Now, before I paint, I'm going to warm up the surface. This will help the board to accept the paint better.
If you don't heat up the board, what will happen?
Well, if you kept layering and you didn't heat the board and you didn't heat between layers, those layers wouldn't fuse together and they could crack off.
Oh, I see. Makes sense.
And that'll help this to flow a little bit better
It's not
too.
too hot. Wow.
So I can,
Just like paint. Oh my gosh. Because I always think of like wax. It's kind of gooey, kind of like a candle or something like that. But this is
and
just
it'll dry
so
fairly
easy.
quickly.
Yeah.
So it's dry to the touch already.
Wow.
So when you work with just straight oil paint and you're painting, depending on how thick you're painting, you're going to have to wait. Because I do oil painting too. And, I might start painting and then I'm like, well, I really need this to dry. I'm gonna have to wait a couple weeks. And then when the painting's done, I might have to work or leave, you know, wait for 6 months for it to dry completely.
Right, right.
So then to fuse it, I'm just gonna apply heat. And I always say we're gonna kiss it with heat. So you can see it glisten, you can see it get wet. That means it's fusing.
Okay.
How hot is that? Can you use it as a hair dryer if you need to?
Oh, are y'all burgers? I mean, right now,
I can
somehow
smell
it
it.
got turned on super high. We're gonna put it back down. I usually have it about medium. So you can see that it glistens and it fuses. And then I can apply layers of different colors over the top of that. And if I take another transparent color,
Now, do you see what you want to paint before you do it, or does it?
sometimes I have a really good idea, and sometimes it turns out the way I see it, and sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it turns out even better, and you're like, oh, I like that better, right?
But the cool thing about encaustic is it's never permanent. I mean, you can scrape it back off. I've got all kinds of tools here that I use to dig back into the paint. I've got woodworking tools, I've got pottery tools, and where I've got these thick layers, I can scrape back and go down to the color that's underneath.
Wow. Very sculptural.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
I can, depending on how deep these grooves are, I can add other color, either the encaustic or actual oil paint into those layers.
Wow.
And I'm just going to come around here. These are some of my pieces that I use for demos in class. So you can see, like this piece here, for example, I had this scrap of wire, and I just heated the first layer where the purple is, and then I pressed this into the wax and then painted over it with the yellow, the bright yellow, and then peeled that off.
Oh, wow.
And then I had to carefully fuse it lightly so it didn't all blend together.
Right.
You can see that it blended a little bit, but it left a great textured surface. A lot of times I'll use, I've got sponges over there, natural sponges that you can build up texture with.
Wow.
You can see here, this is like an example of transparency. So this is just construction paper. This is India ink on board.
Oh, wow.
And then this is nothing over it. 1 layer of the encaustic medium, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can create that foggy effect. You can see on some of the work that it's got the foggy effect, like the painting back there in the corner, just to create that.
Have you found anything that you can't use?
Well, you don't want to use anything that's like not natural. So plastics or
yeah, because that.
anything that's not natural. Anything that's natural, you can pretty much use.
Wow.
So this is one that I did at Shadell Gardens and went out in the garden and got all kinds of little seeds and feathers and branches. And I even incorporated some paper towel back into that to try to recycle it.
That's a great way to do it.
So you can, here's an example. If you can see this woman here, this was a photograph, and you can print that out on a what do you call it? Printers, not laser, but the other kind.
Oh,
the older kind.
I forget. It's but the ink sits
The
on.
best kind of printers are the older printers where the ink
Yeah.
sits on top of the printer. And so that makes it something that you can put in the wax and transfer into that wax, the photograph. This is a stencil. This is charcoal on top. These are wallpaper samples in the background. This is an old book torn up. Buttons, which aren't natural, but if you have enough wax, you can build up that. There's just so many different things you can do. I've got poppy seeds in one down there.
Oh my God.
To give it a sandy texture.
Showcase these. These are so incredible, Beth. I love what you can do.
So it's just really fun to play with. Now, what you guys are going to do is I'm going to give you a little, when you have a tiny canvas like this, I can put a special encaustic medium on it that'll absorb the paint. And it's so tiny, there's no flex to it, so it doesn't crack.
Oh,
so I've got little painting panels
Oh my
that I'm
gosh.
going to give you guys. and you're gonna do some painting.
Awesome. Would you like to go first, Leitra?
Well, two of you can
I-
work.
Oh, we
Let me
both
clean
can
this
work.
off.
This
One on
is-
each
this
side.
is
You
more
have to
like-
share. Share a little bit. We'll get rid of this big chunk of orange. You won't need this big brush.
Oh, I love it.
You'll need smaller brushes like these.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, I gotta
Gosh.
get my glasses.
How long have you been doing this, Beth?
I went to R&F Paints. I wanted to take a pigment stick class because they also make these pigment sticks, which these are all metallic ones, but these are oil paint with a very tiny bit of wax in them. They hand make these, and these have the consistency of lipstick. So it's like painting with a giant lipstick, and it's so great for adding texture. So when I'm oil painting, when I do oil painting, I usually start painting with my hands. I wear gloves and I paint with my hands because I can
Wow.
cover a lot of ground and,
Yeah.
and I get a lot of texture.
Right,
But then
right.
I can go back in with the pigment sticks and build more texture on top of that.
Wow.
So those are fun. So I wanted to take a pigment stick class, but they didn't have one when I could go, and they had the encaustic class, and I'm like, oh, I think it's fun to learn something new, right? So I took a week-long encaustic class and fell in love with it because and it's really the process. It's just such a fun process.
Yes.
And I think with oil paint, I tend to look at the canvas and go, oh, I'm so nervous to start because once I start, what if I mess it up? And then, I can't take it back.
Right, there's
But
some
with this,
pressure
it's like
and-
I can try things, I can do things, and I don't have to worry about taking
Wow.
it back because I can always paint
Wow.
over it. I can scrape it off. I can melt it off.
True.
It's just very flexible
Wow.
process. And you don't need this fancy setup necessarily. In the classes, I tell you how you could actually do a simple setup much simpler setup at home. You can have it's good to have something with a thermostat, but like a pancake griddle, and you could take tuna fish cans and paint in that.
Wow.
When I use large amounts of the encaustic medium, I have a electric fry pan. I put that in.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's very versatile.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, no, anyone can do it. That's wonderful.
And like I said, you can use a lot of the medium, and I'll show people how to use it with oil paint, like the pigment sticks, and not have to spend the money it takes to buy these
Right.
very expensive blocks of paint.
Oh, that's
Or you can
wonderful.
go with your primary colors and
Yeah.
you can mix your own colors.
Yeah.
And these actually come in almost 100 colors.
Oh,
So that's almost too many colors,
Right.
overwhelming.
If too many colors, it's
Right.
very overwhelming.
What color do I want?
Would you like to try it, Leitra, first?
Who wants to go
Sure.
first? Okay.
Go
So
right ahead.
This looks like fun.
What I
Okay,
always suggest is pick out, and I've kind of got them, here's your cools.
Shelby, you're an artist, right?
Here's your cools
can
and your
help me.
warms and some neutrals. Pick out about 3 or 4 colors. Now remember, don't touch this, 'cause it's
Uh-huh.
hot. 3 or 4 colors.
Blue and green.
Well, this isn't like wine and paint where everybody paints the same picture. Here's what we're gonna
Right.
paint, and we're gonna do this first, then we're gonna do this. We're all gonna use the
Right.
same color. No. This is you playing. These classes are you playing. This is not like that at all.
Yes,
No.
that's so wonderful.
We're not painting by numbers here.
I love it because it expresses your creativity. It's not cut out of a, cut and dry
Cookie
kind
cutter,
of cookie
yeah.
cutter.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's all about exploring. I just want you to explore with the materials. I try to
Right.
bring I'm always bringing new stuff. I just want to, people to play and have fun. Just,
great.
start drawing with it.
Yeah.
And you can make,
Oh, it is.
shapes.
Well,
and
I hope you-
just
I
keep
hope
in
you-
mind that it's not a very big piece of paper. So you
Okay.
kind of,
I hope your studio is air conditioned. I can really feel that.
well, yeah,
If it's hot
it
out like
is.
it is today.
it is. And I do have an exhaust fan to
Oh.
pull that's right over my palette to kind of pull
Oh,
that heat and
yeah.
everything out. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
this is a nice big
awesome.
space, but if you're in a smaller space,
Right,
you
right.
really need some airflow. to
Yeah.
be
Oh,
better.
there's some purple and the blue.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
It'll melt off. It's
You
fine.
look at any of these, there's other colors on them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, how
There's
cool.
no worries here. No worries.
Yeah. I love that because
This
it
is-
can be a lot of pressure
this is
with some art
regrowth.
making. So, oh, it's
This is regrowth and restoration. of the
Yes.
years.
I like it. Keep going with
Beautiful.
it.
Keep going. Now then,
Just don't
how
touch
many
that.
different colors should I use? Probably not that many, right?
Use all the colors.
Oh, really? At $30 a piece now. But no, actually,
Let's use a little bit of each color.
see,
But see, you don't
I
need a
don't know what
lot,
to say.
especially with a
Yeah.
print.
can I just like
That's fine.
Yeah.
look at that? Looks like a nautilus right
Yeah.
there. Oh, really?
so
No,
then-
I don't want to move it though when I'm,
Yeah, that you want to
or
try to
I'll
be careful.
smear it.
Yeah.
right?
So you're gonna put this on and we'll just kind of press it down lightly here. I wish I had the roller.
Oh, okay. And then,
And this is just kind of a cover sheet.
what is,
And what, you know what, I'll hold it down and just scrape out this way
okay.
from the center. I'll hold it.
I don't have to press really
Not too
hard,
hard.
right?
Okay, now I'll hold this in, you press and then
Oh,
scrape out
okay.
this way.
You don't want to melt the cord on the,
Oh yeah, that probably would melt pretty fast.
yeah. I think that, oh, I
okay.
did it.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, cool. Look at that. Nice artist. Show the camera.
Yeah, show everyone. Oh my gosh.
Oh, then you just take some paper towel and wipe off what's left.
Wow.
Is that dry already? No.
It'll it'll be dry in just a few seconds.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then I just take this and wipe off what's left. Okay. Oh, it's smearing.
That's okay. We'll just get a little soy wax and
Okay.
toss on there.
Okay.
Okay, see, wasn't that fun?
Yeah. I was gonna say
And
that's
easy.
so wonderful, so easy. And you'll be
I
teaching
promise
classes.
that the next one will have.
Well, and Beth will be here
Yeah.
throughout the summer as well. She'll be here in the gallery.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in and work on this big painting.
Yeah, she'll come in and work on this big painting. So feel free to stop by, ask her questions. And of course, she will be teaching classes, and that will be throughout the summer as well. We are doing that through our Work and Play program. And you can go to our website. It's Workforce Community Services. Click on that and go to Work and Play. Hobbies and interests is the category it's in. And you can register for her classes there so you can get a firsthand experience. And you have everything from intro to like intermediate to.
And you can really be in any class. And if it's your first one, I'll go over all the basics with you
Right,
and
right,
get you started. While other people that have maybe taken a class, they're working on their project.
right.
You know,
right.
so don't worry if it says intro or if it says, more techniques or whatever, encaustic techniques. You can join any class and I'll
That's
make you feel
awesome.
comfortable, and you'll have people that you can look at too that you can ask them what they're doing. The other thing is too, if you have a group, say you have a club or an organization you're in and you'd like to come to the gallery
Yes.
and
yes.
and take a tour and have a demonstration and actually try to and make something, if you just contact Shelby
Yep. Uh-huh.
here, and you can find her contact information. She'll
Yeah.
tell you where.
Yeah.
But you can do that. And if I'm available when, we can make the time work, I'll be here and we'll do a little demo and you can try it out.
Yes.
And your group we can talk about the exhibit and tour the exhibit.
Yes. Gosh, no, thank you so much, Beth. Thank you so much, Leatra, for coming tonight. This has been
Absolutely.
such an insightful talk and exhibit, and we can't wait to share it and to bring awareness. And I hope we can do our part too to help end fracking, so we can help everybody and help our communities. So thank you all again for joining us tonight. Again, this exhibit will be on till August 13th, and we will have a bunch of classes for Beth. And we also are planning an in-person reception at some point too. So stay tuned for that. So thank you again. Thank you to the Student Media Center for broadcasting this for us and making this possible. And we're so excited to have you here. So once again, thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening.